Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscriptions Scaled. I am your host, Nick Fredrick. Today with me, we have a very special guest. We have Rogan Sage, who is the VP of Growth at Perlego. Rogan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Nick. Great to be here.
Well, let's just dive right in here. Why don't you tell us what Perlego is, about your company, about the website, and what you do there?
Great, sure, yeah. So Pallego is a online subscription business for textbooks. We work in the student space, predominantly HE, but we have books across all nonfiction and academic titles. So we work with most of the big publishers you'd recognize, sort of Pearson, Wiley, Cengage, Cambridge University Press, etc. We started around 4 years ago with a very, very small group of publishers, trying to convince them that the new way to manage all of their exactly that this was a good idea. Luckily for me, a lot of that hard graft was done earlier on, and we started to get quite a lot of publishers on relatively early. But I joined around 2 years ago to basically start launching the product in earnest. So we'd built an MVP. We were at a point where we could put a little bit of money behind some growth, and then I came in to help formulate how that looked and push us forward and find avenues for growth. So sort of fundamentally of what the business is in the background, it's so there's a sort of a big industry problem within the textbook industry. It's quite widely covered. That around the same time that music started getting sort of ravaged as an industry by piracy, the textbook industry started getting the same problem, and that was largely caused by obviously the dawn of the internet. But then as publishers' revenues declined, the prices tended to go up in reaction to that to maintain the revenue, which pushed more people towards piracy. And then around sort of 10 years ago in the US, it became legal to sell secondhand textbooks. So that ate further into the publisher's revenues, which sort of worsened the problem, really. So you had a similar thing to what was happening in the music industry. And then obviously you had your sort of Apple Music that came in, and then you had Spotify, which was the model that seems to actually work. And then you've seen that across lots of other industries as well, your Netflixes, etc. And essentially what we're doing is we're taking that model that brought those industries back to growth into the academic textbook space. And what that does is makes it much more affordable and much more flexible for the consumer, and they get access instead of ownership over the materials. So with all sorts of media, access is generally been preferred over ownership over sort of the shift in the last sort of 15 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, the solutions is a hard one for the publishers to cotton on to begin with, to start seeing sort of how that would work. But we spent the last 4 years sort of initially growing that initial product, improving the product, and then we've built out a really nice growth model that's now spinning away in the background, that's bringing us users and growing exponentially on top of that as well.
Awesome. Well, you touched on it there, but I would assume that the publishers came kicking and screaming into this new model, much like the music industry did and others, as you were talking about, of, hey, we've got all this content and it's always been super valuable and lucrative to us, and now we have to go to this new way of consumption and we don't know what that means or how to do that. So that I can see how that was the hardest part of getting this business off the ground.
Absolutely, and that's still a problem now. You know, the publishers are, you know, if you look at Pearson, it's a massive company. The revenue turnover is still where we are in the industry is such a small portion of where some of these bigger players are, and they still have control over the industry, etc. So it's about partnerships, really. It's about working with them to make sure that we can be profitable for them, and also make it work for the students and for the libraries as well.
Yeah. Well, so how did you find yourself at the organization? I mean, what's your background and kind of what do you focus on day to day at Perlego?
Yeah, so my background, I studied marketing at university, just sort of normal course. I did a placement year in Madrid, and whilst I was there, I wanted to play football, and there was this new app that came out called Timpic, which is what they call pachangas in Spanish, which is
Okay.
where somebody would rent a football pitch and then put it on Timpic on the platform, and then the community would say, okay, I'm playing, and you'd have these 10 people that would come together for a five-a-side game who'd never met
Wow.
each other before, and
Okay.
and come and play together, which was super useful for me. So I emailed
Mm-hmm.
the CEO in my final year of uni and said, can I come and work for you when I finish? And then I ended up working for them, the classic sort of San Fran Apple in a garage kind of story. I was in a guy called Andres's back garden for a little while working on that project. And I kind of moved there towards focusing towards growth and thinking about growth
Mm-hmm.
of the business rather than specifically marketing. I sort of quickly realized that that business model wasn't able to grow quickly because it's community based, and you really need to build up a community over time. And that sort of was a bit of a stumbling block for me. I was still in the sort of dreaming phase of being in a high growth startup and something that would grow exponentially really quickly. So I stepped away from that, and I moved back to the UK, moved up to London, and started working for a company called RefMe, which is another edtech startup.
Okay.
So it was my first edtech startup, and we grew super fast. The growth team there I learned a lot from. They were really really impressive. The numbers were coming in thick and fast across various different channels that we were managing. And then at some point we pivoted slightly the business to focus on SEO rather than paying for our marketing. At which point we scaled down the team a little bit, and then eventually the company got sold to Chegg, which is, you may know Chegg. It's one of the biggest education companies, one of the biggest edtechs, and probably the biggest edtech in the world. And then I moved over to a company called Campus Society, which was a student social network. So staying again in the sort of student space.
Okay.
And at some point we wanted to integrate a books platform within the social network, so you could study and learn, so you could socialize and learn at the same time. And that's how I came across the books, academic books kind of side of the edtech space. I spoke to the now VP of strategy at Pallego to talk about an integration. We actually ended up going with a competitor, but after a while, that company pivoted. I wanted to stay in the edtech space and moved over to work for Pallego. So now my role is taking the learnings from those sort of 3 previous experiences, some of the relationships that in the industry that I've been able to leverage to help us grow and get us through the door. And then basically what I've been focusing on is the pirate metrics funnel, if you will, really working out how the business works from a monetary point of view and establishing that product market fit and making sure that the business has room to grow into and a clear path to growth.
Awesome. Well, I just want to point out that earlier when you said the word pitch, if it wasn't for the pandemic series Ted Lasso, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. But fortunately, it was that gave me some education to know that you were talking about a field at that point. So it's kind of a funny point there. But those past organizations, RefMe and others, were any of those subscription-based monetization models, or do they have different ones?
No, they were different models. So we had different models. So Campus Society, for example, was a social network. You signed up for free, and the idea was to turn it into an ad business, but we never actually made it to the ad serving stage.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, so good point there. As you've come on to this side, to this business, obviously being that sort of subscription-based model, what's some immediate things that have stuck out to you that you were like, man, I didn't ever realize this was so different about, a subscription model compared to things you've done in the past?
To be honest, in previous roles, I've tried to apply some of the thinking around subscription models to those previous experiences. So it was a space that I'd read up on quite a lot. So in terms of surprise about subscription businesses specifically, it was there wasn't too much of it. I kind of knew what I was getting into.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of things along the way that weren't necessarily specifically about it being a subscription model, but more about the business in itself that you learn along the way, and all those sort of, as every business all of the tricks and challenges that you come up against.
Yeah, well, and to add to that, I mean, the average subscription business is looking at a perpetually recurring model, not one that has any seasonality necessarily associated with it. That's not terribly common. But I have worked with other subscription businesses in your space and know that, the academic school year and terms and things like that can really kind of play havoc on typical subscription metrics. So talk a little bit about that, how you guys are dealing with that particular challenge and what you might be doing to overcome it.
Yeah, so as you say, it's quite difficult to model out your churn and your retention when the use of the product is not necessarily the same in 1 month as it is in another. So for the academic year, obviously, especially for textbooks, you're not reading them over the summer,
Right.
so your churn goes up, retention down, usage goes down. So to manage that from for an early stage startup like us, we don't have enough data at the moment because you sort of need years worth of data to work to model out what the system looks like. So we use proxies for that. So one of the proxies that we use is organic search traffic for the keywords, for specific keywords. So we can model out the seasonality based on the demand that we see through Google. And then we basically can replace that over our stats to give us an indication of what that might mean in terms of how we're performing.
Yeah, some great way to go get stats that you can get today to see, kind of predict out what you think that demand's going to be just based upon search terms. Theoretically, your subscriber, even if they might pause it for the summer session or something like that, has a finite end to their subscription, right? When they graduate or move on into a new course of study, whatever the case might be. But even throughout that, 4 years of university, how are you dealing with keeping that customer engaged? And if they do pause over the summer or cancel, get them to come back. I mean, are you guys looking at strategies to kind of keep those consumers engaged and coming back? Because, acquiring new consumers is both expensive and time consuming. You want to hold on to the ones you've got, right?
Yeah, so there's sort of a few things that we've done. So our main driver for growth is around is through SEO. So probably 80% of our traffic comes through SEO and direct. Right. So that's a combination of two things. One, some people hearing from friends and whatever, or returning after when they realize they need the textbooks again and they've already used the product in the past. And then on the SEO side, it's really, if you think about when you get assigned your textbooks at the beginning of university, your lecturer says, these are the 3 textbooks you need to buy for this semester. And then you have an instant need that didn't exist before. You didn't aspire to have a textbook previously. It's not something that you can, that comes up on your Instagram feed and says, look at this shiny textbook. You get this instant need, and what predominantly most students do is they go to Google and they search for it. Typically, they'll find the book a price that they don't want to pay, because students don't ever want to pay anything, really. Right. And then they'll end up they'll actually be suggested by Google, which is a weird quirk of how Google's algorithm works. Is they'll actually be suggested to add PDF to the end of that search term, because it's the most common follow-up search term for the title of the book. And what we do is we try and optimize for that. So our position with the publishers and with the students is that we're a sort of more of a solution to piracy, to bring people who couldn't afford the book at full price back to the business. So what that means is whenever somebody needs a book, they are then led to us through that mechanism. So you inherently, as a student, when you don't need the book anymore, don't need the product anymore, you can cancel or stop using it, but then you might end up coming back through that same mechanism again. So there's that sort of organic mechanism that works quite nicely. And then obviously, the tactics that you do from a growth perspective that you can leverage to get people to come back are many. And then one of the things we've been looking at is pausing the subscription. So through Christmas period, for example, typically students don't use it that much. Often they'll want to come back afterwards. So it's about finding a way to facilitate that behavior, I guess. Right. At the moment, we haven't built that functionality in, but it's on the roadmap for this year to allow students to pause for however long they like, and then start their subscription again, which just helps with a bit with the churn rate.
Yeah, it makes sense. Certainly, I've seen others in your space have pretty good success with pause features of, hey, how long do you want to pause it for? 1 or 2 months, and then they'll automatically come back instead of relying on them to take action. Cancel and then remember to come back, or having to resolicit. And you don't want to do any of those things. So that's certainly smart. Talk a little bit about the site and the marketplace itself, right? Because you aren't creating content, you're taking a publisher's content, you're making it available to students. So what are the different offer constructs you have there? Is it a pay a price, unlimited consumption, all the textbooks on the site? Can you pay book by book? And are there add-on features? Like how do you guys have that modeled?
So it's a very, very clean model at the moment. It's a monthly subscription or an annual subscription, which is discounted. And that's for unlimited access to all of the content on the site.
Okay.
So the primary thing that we're offering at the moment is the content, but what we're looking to do is build out features that actually enhance the learning experience. So the phrase that we coin is better than print. So what you have with the print book is, you can highlight it, you can add your tabs in the book, your bookmarks, if you will. What we're looking to do is emulate all of that, so you can do the same things that you could do before. So we already have annotations, highlights, things like that, but then we're adding features on top of it to allow you to learn faster, smarter, and more efficiently, which are things like searching within a book. So you can now search for any search term within any book. So, you might find marketing 101, but it covers 10, 15 different topics. And, it's one thing that you want to find. You can very, very quickly find that through searching within the book rather than using sort of the traditional contents page. Although we obviously have the contents page there as well, which nicely links through to the content as well.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about outreach and how you're acquiring new customers, where you're reaching them. You talked a lot about organic SEO, and that's certainly a main channel. But is there any other special offers or things you're doing to try to, entice them and get them through the paywall?
Yeah. So fundamentally, we have a 2-week free trial, which we offer across all customers. And then with certain campaigns, we do also offer further discounts on top of that. So we have a coupon system. This just allows us to be quite flexible with testing different propositions to customers and working out what works. So we can extend the free trial with a coupon to see if that resonates more with the customers, or we can add a percentage discount to see if that resonates. Typically, we found actually extending the free trial, despite being actually worth less than the discount over the course of a year, is much more appealing for the customer. Okay. It sort of speaks to reason, because they have the opportunity to then churn and not pay that total price for the year. But we're doing a lot of testing around this sort of thing that allows us to just learn. Basically, we're still in that. I think you always have to be learning, but we're still in a very, very early stage of learning, despite having been launched in earnest for a couple of years now.
Yeah, some other challenges I've seen in your space, and I'm curious if you've run into this already as well, is, certainly you've got a lot of students who are, paying for college, or their parents are paying for college, other family members and things like that. And so they might be using a parent's credit card to go online and, pay for textbooks or study guides or whatever the case might be. And then, mom and dad gets the statement and sees something that they don't recognize and might, inquire about the charge or issue a chargeback or, something like that. So you have that just disconnect between the subscriber and the payee. Have you guys run into any of that? And is there anything you're doing to try to combat that?
To be honest, not really. So for people questioning the charges, we don't get a really high volume of that. I think it's not something that we've really seen. But it is interesting that you point out the parents potentially, pay for the books for the student. So it's actually a really good opportunity for us, because we can start to use that in our favor and say, we can say to the students, look, maybe somebody can pay for you. You can start to put in messaging that insinuates that maybe they should think broader than having to look in their own pocket for the book, for the subscription price. Sorry. So yeah, it's not been a massive problem for us. It's sort of an opportunity instead, which is great.
Good, just something to look out for there. We've also seen with prepaid cards, whether reloadable or not, some students again, limited funds, and getting it from different places. Perhaps they are gifts that they got for graduation and things like that they might be using. Can from a subscription perspective, eventually will cause challenges. So we've seen that as well, certainly. But I guess in terms of you have a product that students don't necessarily want, right? But it's something that they certainly need. They've got to have textbooks, and they're very expensive, and when you buy them physically, it's something to take care of. So how do you market to those customers who are coming at it from a different perspective? Because so many subscription businesses are marketing in a hey, make you want us type way, but you're in a position of they need you. So how do you position that differently?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. So one of the things that we've come up against is actually paying on a CPM basis, or paying on your usual ad slots don't tend to work as well for us as they might for another business. Due to that, exactly. They get assigned the textbook within a week. Typically, they will have either bought that textbook, downloaded that textbook for free, or decided not to buy the textbook. So you've got a sort of short window, and you can't really do the marketing in the same way perpetually around the year that you would for another product. So
yeah.
So what we try to do is sort of establish that brand quite early on in the journey. And so because we have the students come in every year, a new cohort every year, that brand affinity dies with each cohort that ends their process as well. So it's really about getting in there at the very beginning and getting them to understand and think textbooks, Pallego, which is something that we're trying to tap into. So we have a partnership with UCAS, which is the Universities and Colleges Admission Services in the UK. It's a bit of a strange model in the UK. Everybody has to apply through UCAS for university. You can't apply directly to the university. So we leverage a relationship with their media arm, which allows us to access those students as soon as they apply to university. So we start to talk as soon as they start to hear from UCAS about university in general. They start to hear about Pallego as well. That model obviously can't be replicated in the US because it's a very different model. But these sort of opportunities So these sort of opportunities we try to tap into. But one of the biggest learnings that we've had over the last 18 months is really this getting in there at the point of need, at the point of demand, because you can't, as you say, you can't really sell people the dream of the Marketing 101 textbook. Some people you can. Some people are they're really interested in a particular topic, or we even sell to professionals that are looking to brush up their skills, widen their knowledge on their profession. So medical books, law books, etc. for those professions. But we really have looked to focus down on that being in the space that students go to when they get that need. So Google is obviously a massive opportunity for us, but SEO is a well, I would say medium to long-term play, but it's a long-term play for most people in most cases. So our strategy for SEO will hopefully put us in a place where we're there where the customer is looking for the problem that they're trying to solve. And we're seeing really good results from that so far. But then in the short term, obviously you have Google Ads as well, so you can use the search ads themselves to put yourself in position one on the results page and gain that sooner rather than later. And then there's different partnerships that we work with various partners as well. So we work with the likes of Talus, who provide reading list service to the universities. So they host the reading lists for the university, and then within the reading list that the student sees, they'll have the option to purchase from Pallego. And then we've started to also work with a few textbook price comparison sites. So these are the sites that get that other Google traffic that says, I want cheap textbooks. They land on the price comparison site, and then they find the book, and we start to appear there as an option for them. So yeah, the big thing for us is getting in there at that point where the customer has found that need and is as early in that as possible.
Yeah. So we obviously mentioned the U.S. and the U.K. What other countries are you guys actively marketing?
Yep. So we're available worldwide, from
Okay,
in any country. So it's because of the model that we're working on for SEO. It's based on the search demand wherever that comes from. So we're actually growing sort of everywhere really, but it's driven by the products that we have on the platform. So the books are predominantly in English at the moment, but we've expanded that out into Italian, German, Spanish, and recently we've added French, and which means that we get search demand from those areas that search in those languages. So
yeah,
inherently, the business grows quite naturally based on the demand for the content that we're able to serve. Um, and then what we do on top of that is we have these key markets. We've added the content in these markets because they're markets that are interesting for us, obviously, and you need to put marketing spend behind that to start to grow those areas as well. So we just this year have really started putting a bit of money into Spain, LATAM, so obviously Spanish language regions, Italy, as I say, Germany, and France as well. And then you've got inherently all of your English learning countries, your UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, etc. So
right. So those who might be coming from worldwide, certainly from other countries where you're not actively marketing, are they seeing more of a local site, or are they seeing your UK site, or what do they see, and then what payment methods and currencies do they have available to them?
So they'll see the UK, the English language site. We just have the
Yeah,
.com at the moment. It's not
yeah,
localized, but the content is inherently localized to the language because
sure,
the book is written in that language. So you have actually sort of a pretty low bar to get into the content that it is that you want to read. If you understand some English, then
sure.
the bar is sort of low. Um, but yeah, we're definitely looking at sort of optimizing the site so that we can capture better search demand, better traffic, and provide a better service to those who don't speak English.
Yeah. What about currencies? Is it U.S. dollars,
Oh, sorry.
pounds, or you have other?
Yeah, so we have I think around 12 currencies available. So
Okay.
US dollars, Australian dollars, euros,
Okay.
pounds, and then
The
we
majors.
also
Yeah.
all the majors, but then we also have like Swedish krona, Danish krona, and all of the Nordic,
Okay.
etc. Yeah.
Okay. And then as far as methods goes, I assume credit card, any other alternative payments or anything else?
At the moment, no, just a credit card. So we just accept the credit card at the moment, and we do that through Stripe, which does allow us to do Apple Pay and Google Pay, which is something we're looking at
Hmm.
doing in the next quarter. Unfortunately, doesn't work with PayPal, so it's something that's a bit of a blocker for us. But ripping out your payment system and putting something new in could be a 1 year job. So we're working with what we have,
Yeah.
and yeah, hopefully that will help us improve our conversion rates.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, you just touched on it, ripping out your payment system. As you guys are looking to scale, obviously let's go get new customers and really grow this thing. How are you making decisions around what are the right technology, build versus buy decisions, go find a vendor and source it versus, go it alone and build it ourselves? How do you guys make those decisions?
Um, Typically, if something's complex, it's foolish to try and build everything yourself.
Right.
Generally, integrating a third party, work with loads of other suppliers. They've gone through the bugs, they've gone through the issues. Um, they've built features based on their core concept and then built that out. So they've built inherently a third party has often built something better than you can build, and it's available up front. So typically we would go with third party providers for most things. But then obviously you have your core application that needs to be built and owned by yourself. So if it's core, if it's something that's not easily available from somewhere else, or we need it to be particularly bespoke for our needs, or we will need it to be bespoke in the future, then we'll typically build ourselves.
Yeah. Certainly makes sense. That's always the strategy we recommend. Let the pros do what the pros do, and you focus on what differentiates you as a business, you as a product in the marketplace. Because yeah, some of those things in the background, your customers sure don't care about. They just want it to work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it can be hard to remember that sometimes. You just got to remember the objective of what it is you're trying to achieve, and then
Yeah.
weigh up the options and the
Yeah, that's
costs.
certainly discipline, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you guys seen any change in the business as a direct result of the pandemic, and has that caused you to pivot anything in terms of what you're offering or the way you're going to market?
It's definitely affected the industry as a whole. So the move to online has pushed universities to think about their provision of education as a whole. So our conversations with universities have definitely been hastened, but then also things like we had some luck with that. I think that the COVID response sites on government websites started listing us as a resource for people, which obviously, if you know anything about SEO,
Nice.
is a wonderful backlink, and also a good traffic driver for
Yeah.
us. So we got a boost from that, and then we also started working with some partners off the back of that as well, who wanted to support their student customers through a period where they didn't have access to the university library anymore. So we ran a pilot with Barclays Bank in the UK. We ran a pilot with Vodafone actually that was a global deal. And we saw some great successes from initial pilots from them at the back end of the academic year. What they did is they paid for access for their students to Pallego until the end of the academic year and said, look, we've got you covered. Don't worry about it. We know you can't go to the library, etc. And those were great successes. We got really good feedback from customers, and then since then have done follow-up deals with both of those partners and some others, including in the UK now. If you open a student bank account with Barclays, then you get a free year of Pallego with your bank account. So it opened some doors for us to work with some really great partners, and inherently the demand for online provision of textbooks that weren't available in universities gave us a sort of, not organic, but it gave us an uplift as well. So on all sides, it's been really positive for us, despite it being, a challenge for working remote as a business and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Love those embedded programs like you were talking about with Barclays, where it kind of just like builds in a customer immediately. And then, hopefully after the year, they want to stick around and continue on. But like they're, that's channel partner sales at its best right there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it gave us some really good opportunities. And I think we've learned a lot from them. And, now those partnerships have borne fruit and we're kind of looking to optimize them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Rogan, a lot of great insights there. I certainly appreciate you sharing all that about the business and kind of how you guys are scaling out. Tell our listeners where they can go to find the business and where they can get in contact with you if they have more questions and want to reach out.
Yeah, so in the spirit of SEO, if you want to find Pallego, then head over to Google and type in Pallego, Perlego, which is the verb to read in Latin, if you're wondering where the name come from.
I was wondering. Yeah, that explains it. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to get in touch with me directly, it's just Rogan at Pallego, Rogan.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on today and sharing your background, sharing about the company and what you guys are doing over there. It sounds like it's an exciting ride that you guys are on, and wish you guys nothing but success.
Great. Thanks, Nick. It's been a pleasure.